Thank you, ladies. If you would, take your Bible this morning. Y'all can find your way to Genesis chapter 12. I'm going to read our text here in Matthew. Y'all tired of this yet? I'm the only person in the world that tries to preach Matthew out of the book of Genesis, it seems like. But that's where we've been at. So we're going to continue here. I know it is Father's Day, but just like on Mother's Day, the Lord has lined some things up here in the text for us to look at, and some things that I'd like to try to bring to the surface here to try to help us this morning. So y'all are in Genesis chapter number 12 this morning, Genesis chapter 12. And I'm going to read our base here in Matthew chapter 1. Matthew chapter 1 verse 1 says, "The book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham." If he's a son of some, that means there had to be a father, right? So we're going to deal with some of these fathers today. Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Judas and his brethren. Once again, that Judas there is the Greek form of the Hebrew name Judah. That's not Judas Iscariot. That is Judah, okay? So we have Abraham begat Isaac, who begat Jacob. I want to look at these three men, if I could, this morning. With the Lord's help, I'd like to preach a simple message on the thought of, Father, Father, are you fake or for real? Father, Father, are you fake or for real? Now, I'm going to catch up with you in Genesis chapter 12, and we're going to start out with Abraham. There's some things here in the text that we all know and love about Abraham. If I were to say Abraham this morning, of course, we've already preached a good bit about him. We've talked about his faith. But there's a little old song that's called Father Abraham. Father Abraham had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. Abraham was the father of what? I've been through something. Abraham was the father of what? Isaac, but what nation? Israel. There we go. Good gracious. We even had Sunday school this morning. Father Abraham was the father of the nation of Israel. God brought him to that place. He brought him out of the Ur of the Chaldees. He promised him, and he said what? I'm going to make of you a great nation, okay? He was the father of Israel. I've been gone too long. I can already tell that. I'm going to have to limit my trips to no more than one service at a time. Either that or we're going to get a big old screen up here, and I'm going to Zoom y'all, and y'all going to listen to me telepreach from behind the wheel. That's all I've done for the last week and a half is drive, okay? But no, he was the father of the nation of Israel, okay? We have a lot of things in our mind that we love about Abraham, that we talk so much about. Hey, God told him to go. He told him to leave that land and go to a different land, so he did. I preached a whole sermon on it, a whole Sunday, about the faith of Abraham and how that he had faith through all these different scenarios. But I talked about the faith that he had, and we all want to look at it and talk about the faith of Abraham. We'll talk about how great that Abraham is. We want to talk about his faith there. We want to talk about how that he was the father of the nation. What about his fighting ability? We talked about that in Genesis 14 when we looked at it. As Lot has been kidnapped there, he goes into those kings have taken him out of his country there, taken him out of Sodom. Abraham goes in with 318 servants. He fights them all. We can talk about his fighting ability. We can talk about how good of a fighter that Abraham and his servants were. We can go on and we can talk about his finances. Genesis 13, Abraham and Lot, they're what? They're traveling together. Okay? They're traveling together and they had to separate. But right before they separated, what does the Bible say? It says the land could not hold them, could not bear them, could not contain them because they had so much. Do y'all remember that? Do y'all remember that? Abraham and Lot had so much together that the land could not hold them anymore, so they had to separate out. Of course, there was strife there between the herdmen, but the main gist of it was they had to separate because they had too much. They just had too much. These were just great men. We could go on. We could talk about the friends that he had. The Bible tells us in Isaiah 41:8 that Abraham was a friend of God. He goes on again. 2 Chronicles 27, a friend of God. James 2:23, a friend of God. But not only a friend of God, he's a friend of man as well. Really, Brother Easton? Yeah. Genesis 13, he goes in and he does what all these other kings couldn't do. Saved everybody from Sodom, brings them back out. And they were so friendly with him, they tried to give him all the goods. They were trying to be friends with Abraham. Then when Sarah passed away, the Hittites in the land, what did they do? They were so friendly with Abraham that they said, I'll tell you what, you pick wherever you want to and you can have that as a burial place for your family. Abraham has a lot of good things going for him, does he not? Anything you can look at. We would be hard-pressed to find anything bad about Abraham. We all want to talk about these great men of the Bible. I've got a little book series called Great Men of the Bible. There's a number 1 and there's a number 2, and it goes through all these men. We're talking about Moses. Moses was a great man, was he not? But what did Moses do wrong? Somebody tell me. He struck a rock instead of speaking to the rock. We have a fault. David was a great man. He's a man after God's own heart. We've been talking about that all morning. What did David do wrong? A lot. Yeah, a lot's a good answer. No, he had an adulterous affair with Bathsheba. He had Uriah the Hittite killed. He was doing some bad things, right? And then you find out later on in the kingdom, David took a back seat and didn't handle a lot of things that should have been handled. So Joab, his commander, had to come in and handle it for him, and it blew on up. I'm not preaching David this morning, but I'm trying to tell you, he done some great things. What about Noah? Noah did some great things. He built the ark, right? But what did Noah do when he got off the ark? He got drunk off the vineyard that he planted. Idle hands will get you in trouble. He wasn't building an ark no more, so he built a vineyard and he got drunk off the vineyard. There's a lesson in there and a lot of sermons that I'm not preaching this morning. But no, we have these great men of the Bible. They did wonderful, wonderful things, and we would look at them and we call him Father Abraham. He did so much. He did so good. But sadly, just like a lot of us today, Abraham didn't do everything right. Abraham did do some things wrong. And I want to show you in the text this morning that it wasn't all the things that he did right that carried on a legacy with his children. Instead, it was what he did wrong. Really? Really? I'm going to show you that. I'm going to prove it to you this morning. But I just want you to understand here that title, Father, Father, are you fake or for real? I want us to know the fathers that we see on Sunday morning, is that the father that is there Monday through Saturday? Not just fathers, mothers, children, everybody. We've got a bad case of this to where we have two identities. We have the identity that we want to set up for everybody else to see, and then we've got the identity that we really are when nobody's watching, right? Can we be fair this morning and realize that's every single one of us? That we all have things that are in the closet that we don't want nobody to see. We all have little things that we're hiding. We would love for everybody to look at us and see Abraham. Because I could probably go around the room this morning and ask what Abraham did wrong, and some of us here wouldn't be able to name it. Some of us here are sitting there in our minds right now thinking, what is he talking about? Abraham didn't do nothing wrong. I can't think of anything in my mind that was wrong with Abraham. We would love for that to be our testimony, would we not? How wonderful would it be if when I passed away, they put on my tombstone, he done nothing wrong. That ship sailed a long time ago. It ain't no prayer for that. What you laughing about over here? My own wife, she just stabbed me in the back on Father's Day. It hurts too. Maybe that's just from driving as far as I've driven the last week and a half. I'll tell you what, if you've never had the pleasure of driving one of them tall Ford Transit vans down I-80 through Nebraska and let that wind hit you, you are missing a treat. I had the steering wheel, instead of straight at 10 and 2, I held it like this to fight the wind the whole way. It was bad. But we made it. We're all right. Everything was good. But no, I'm trying to tell you, I would love for everybody to just know the good about me. I would love for everybody to just look at me and say, hey, you're doing such a wonderful job. I would love for everybody to be able to text me on Father's Day and say, hey, you're doing a great job. At the end of the day, there's a lot of things I don't do right. There's a lot of things that I've done wrong. There's a lot of things that I wish I could go back and I could fix. Yesterday, we got to the house. Like I said, our nerves were shot. We've been traveling. We finally got in. We got in Friday at like 2 o'clock. And I thought, man, I just need one good night's sleep. That's all I need. One good night's sleep. I've been sharing a hotel bed with Darden all week. And I mean, that's a blessing. But every time I turn over, she turns over too. And she'd get right up next to me. And eventually, I'd run out of bed. So in the middle of the night, I'd go, and I'd shove her to the far side of the bed without waking her up. And I'd roll back to the middle, and we'd start over again. And we'd roll back throughout the rest of the night. But I was like, I just need one good night's of sleep. That's all I need, and I'll be better. 1:30 rolls around, and I hear Darden come in the hallway. And I hear her come in the bedroom. And I hear my darling wife say, go get your daddy. That's fair. That's fair. She takes care of Nate, okay? She said, go get your daddy. So she comes around to my side of the bed. She said, I want to rock. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to rock you, girl. I'm going to rock you right to sleep. I need to go back to bed. But no, I picked her up and I carried her and we got in that rocking chair. And we start rocking. My poor rocking chair is screaming for relief. It's got rips in it. The springs are trying to squeak and everything else. They've been a bunch of miles in that rocking chair with them babies. But I'm rocking her down, and just about the time she closed her eyes, she's about to go back to sleep, and I'm watching that clock, and I'm like, yes, I'm going to go back to bed. She pops up like a jack in the box and goes, Daddy, I need to potty. I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go again. So we go and we use the bathroom, and I put her pull-up back on her and all that, get her back in her recliner, and I start rocking her down again. The moral of the story is this: I didn't get the night's sleep that I wanted. I was fed up. I was tired. And the next day, she's pitching a fit about something. Sue was trying to get her to hand her something. And I finally lost my patience. And I just snatched it out of her hands. And when I did, guess what my darling little girl did? because I'll run to the other end of the house because I've done broke her little heart. And Sue looked at me and said, there's no need for that. I'm like, dear God, I wanted to hit her. I'm telling you, I was fed up. I done had enough. That was the least of what I could have done. I was wore out and tired. I lost my patience. You know what that is? That's a daddy that wishes he could say he's done everything right, but he hasn't always done it right. There's plenty of times, daddies, where you've done it wrong just like I have. And before the mamas get all high and mighty on us, you've done it wrong too. Let's be fair. Today's not y'all's day. Y'all had y'all's day in May. It's the daddy's turn. Now, we have things that we have all done wrong. Abraham has done a lot of right things that we would love for everybody to see, but at the end of the day, there are some things he's done wrong. And sadly, the thing that he done wrong is what seems to stick with his family. I hate that it's this way. I really do. I really hate that this is the way that our flesh works. But you could do something right 10,000 times in a row, but the one time that you treat somebody wrong, what do they remember? The time you treated them wrong. Daddies, you can be the most patient person ever. Because let's face it, Daddy, you ain't got that nurturing care that Mama does. God didn't make you that way. Daddy didn't make you to where you want to coddle them and make everything right all the time. The Lord made you to where half the time you just want to beat it out of them. DHS, I ain't hitting nobody. I just let y'all know I'm preaching to y'all up there this morning. I ain't hitting nobody. There's a difference between thoughts and actions. No, I'm not saying that, okay? I'm not trying to be over mean this morning. And I know you're not either. But I am being honest and telling us that we get to our wits' end. We get to that point to where we've lost all of our nurture, we've lost all of our care, and we're like, we're supposed to fix this the only way we know how. And the only way we know how, in the words of my wife, is to go hulk on something and just make it work. I'm trying to work on something. I'm trying to get something loose. I'm trying to pull a fence post out. I'm trying to move something across the yard. And Sue will be like, well, just don't go hulking on it, and I'll just pick it up and I'll just jerk it, and half the time I tear my back up and I tear it up and everything else. I've been hulked on it. That's what all of us men want to do. We want to just go brain before brains. We want to just make it work. We don't think anymore. We don't have that nurture. We don't have that patience. And at the end of the time, we mess it up. And you're thinking back to instances that you've messed up and you wish you could have done different on too. Because after I jerked that out of Darden's hand the other day, I told Sue, I was holding Nate, I said, you take him, I got to go make that right. And I went and I picked her up, and I told her, I said, I'm sorry, Daddy shouldn't have done that. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. I didn't mean to do that. I'm just tired, I'm wore out, and I shouldn't have done it. Good things that I wish everybody would know, but sadly there's bad things as well. So what did Abraham do that's bad that I'm talking about? I'm glad you asked. Genesis chapter number 12, we've already hit this text since I've been here. The first part of that text is what? It's when God calls him out. He's taking him out of his country. He's going to give him the covenant. You would think that this chapter that starts out with Abraham getting the promise, okay? I'm talking about the promise of the Bible. This is the promise that is going to follow them all throughout time that is still there. This is the big one. This is the big promise. God is about to give Israel, eventually they're going to be Israel, He's about to give all of them this land. He's given him that promise. You're talking about a high point in Abraham's life. He's way up here. Surely to goodness, nothing can knock him off of his high point, off of this mountain peak in his lifetime. But then verse number 10 rolls around. That's where I want to pick up. And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. And it came to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarai his wife, Behold now, I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. How bad would that hurt y'all's feelings if your wife looked at you and said, you're fair. You're not great, but you're fair to look at. I know he's not saying that, but that's my brain this morning. Thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. He's saying here, Sarah, you look good. They ain't got nothing like you in this land. I kind of felt like that when we went north. Ain't nobody up there looked like my wife did. Every one of them looked kind of rough. They looked like they'd had a hard life up there. But we went up there, and when Abraham went to Egypt here, he said, look, you're the hottest thing around here. Everybody's going to look at you, and they're going to want you, but there's one problem with that. You're mine. And the answer to that problem is to get rid of me so they can have you. So let's do this. I want you, verse 13, say I pray thee, thou art my sister. That way, if somebody decides they want you, they won't kill me. Instead, they'll think that I'm your brother, and maybe they'll just try to butter me up and try to sweeten me up to let me have, good gracious, I'll get out in a second, to make me want to let them have you. There we go. Maybe they're trying to do something like that instead. He says, I pray thee, thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake. Abraham says, you know what, Sarah? Tell them that you're not my wife, but instead you're my sister, so that I don't get hurt. With me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. And it came to pass that when Abram was come into Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman, that she was very fair. The princes also of Pharaoh saw her, and commended her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. I'll tell you what, Abraham's a piece of work there for letting them take his wife. I said it. A lot of people don't want to say it, but I'll say it. Abraham is a piece of work there for putting his own safety above that of his wife. We'll leave that alone. But they took her before Pharaoh into Pharaoh's house, and he entreated Abram. That's what I was talking about. He tried to butter Abram up because that's supposed to be the brother, not the husband, for her sake. And he had sheep and oxen and he-asses and men servants and maid servants and she-asses and camels. And the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. I want you to pay attention to how this is written out in verse 18. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, remember this statement. What is this that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? So what has Abram done wrong? I'll tell you what Abram's done wrong. Abram was so worried about his own safety that he put the safety of his wife that he ought to be loving more than anything, that ought to have become one with his flesh there, that ought to be his other half, his helpmeet, his better half. He put her in danger instead of putting himself in danger. And he lied. He lied. Are you serious? It's all the good things that Abram has done, all the wonderful things that Abraham is going to go and do, you want to point out a lie. A lie is still sin. A lie is still sin. It is still wrong. It is still something that we ought not do. I don't care how big. I don't care how small. I don't care if it's a half lie. You'll understand that a bit more when I get to the next portion of this here. But I want you to know here in the text that he has lied about who Sarah is to him. You see, instead of being remembered as a father of nations in his faith and his fight and his finances and being a friend of God, I'm afraid Abraham was going to be known for his fibs instead. He lied to Pharaoh about who Sarah was. Surely, Easton, that's nothing big. Okay, go to Genesis chapter 20. Let me show you something else. So remember that in Genesis 12. But then in Genesis chapter number 20, the Bible says this. And Abraham journeyed from this. He done got his ham now. He ain't just Abram anymore. Done got the ham. Abraham journeyed from therefore toward the south country and dwelled between Kadesh and Shur and sojourned in Gerar. And Abram said of Sarah his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech king of Gerar sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, behold, thou art but a dead man, for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife. But Abimelech could not come near her, and he said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? Said he not unto me, she is my sister. And even she herself said, he is my brother. So now not only is Abraham lying, but Sarah's lying too. All of them, a bunch of stinking liars. That's all they are here. They want to lie about all of this that is going on. He's my brother. In the integrity of my heart and the innocency of my hands have I done this. And God said unto him in a dream, yeah, I know that thou didst this in thy integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld thee from sinning against me, therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. Now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for thee, and thou shalt live. If thou restore her not, know thou that thou shalt surely die, thou and all that are thine. Therefore Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all these things in their ears. Now not only does Abimelech know that Abraham and Sarah are a bunch of liars, but now everybody else knows they're a bunch of liars too. He told all the servants. He told them all the things in their ears, and these men were sore afraid. Then Abimelech called Abram and said unto him, remember this in verse number 9, what hast thou done unto us? That's the same phrase that was in Genesis 12, except for instead of us, it said me in Genesis 12. Pharaoh said, what have you done to me? Abimelech said, what have you done to us? You see, Abraham was looking out for himself, and because he's a liar, because he's doing things wrong here in the text, he's hurting everybody around him. He's made a mistake. This is Father Abraham. This is the hero of the Jewish people. This is the one their claim to fame. This is their hero, if I can say it that way. And instead of being a hero and acting like a hero, instead he is lying. He's made his wife lie, and he's hurt everybody around him. All of them. Brother Easton, this is Abraham. Yeah. Abraham, the father of nations, the fighter, the faithful, the one with the finances, the one with the friends. He's every single bit of that, but he's also Abraham of fields. He is also the one that is lying. He is a father who wants everybody to know all the good, but sadly there's bad as well. And I hate to say it, but it's the bad that's going to stick around. Really, Brother Easton? Yeah. Let me show you something else. Go to Genesis 26. Genesis chapter 26, verse number 6. You see, this didn't stop at Abraham. It keeps on going. And Isaac dwelt in Gerar. What's Gerar? That's the same place where Abraham just lied to Abimelech. Same place. Verse 7, and the men of the place asked him of his wife, Rebekah, and he said, she is my sister. Where did he learn that at? Where did he pick up that little tidbit at? Where do you think he got that idea? You think he just dreamed that up on his own? She is my sister, for he feared to say she is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she's what? Fair to look upon. It kind of seems like that saying, like father, like son, might be biblical. It kind of seems like that might ring true here in the text. Because Abraham, because Abraham here on two separate occasions has lied about his wife being his sister instead. Now, I didn't mention it. That last text, he goes on to explain to Abimelech that she is actually his half-sister. That's why I said a half-lie. A half-lie or a half-truth is still a whole lie, okay? It's still a lie. He still lied, all right? But I wanted to touch on that so y'all don't say that I missed something, because I didn't. But no, Abraham has lied on two separate occasions here about who Sarah is, and now because of that, his boy Isaac, who was supposed to be known for a few things. Isaac was supposed to be known as this sworn child, the child that God has sworn to Abraham that he's going to have, the promised child, the one that he is waiting for, the one that was given to them in their old age. The same covenant that Abraham had is passed down to Isaac. Not only is Isaac known for the covenant and being the sworn child, but he's known for being the sacrifice on Mount Moriah, the picture of Christ. He's known for all these things. He's known for his sons that he's going to have there. He's known for all of this. And he's known for being sneaky now. See, he's got all this good going for him. He's got all of it. The very covenant that God gave to Abraham passes down to Isaac and then passes on down again to Jacob. Only 3 men. 3 individual men carried this covenant. These are the 3. And guess what? Abraham was a liar. Now Isaac's a liar. But now let me throw something else at you. This is in chapter number 26. You go back and you look at chapter number 20. And then I want you to tell me what happens in chapter number 21. So Abraham just lied for the second time in chapter 20, but now something happens in 21. Anybody know what it is? Read verse number 2, chapter 21. For Sarah conceived and bare Abraham a son in his old age at the set time in which God had spoken to him. And Abraham called the name of the son that was born unto him, whom Sarah bare to him, Isaac. Why is this so important, Brother Easton? That's in chapter 21. Abraham lied in chapter 12. He lied in chapter 20. Isaac's born in 21. Now Isaac's going to lie in 26. Here's the problem. Isaac could not have been alive to know that Abraham lied to Pharaoh and Abimelech. He wasn't here yet. So how did he know about what Abraham did and how that he lied to Pharaoh and Abimelech? You don't know how he knew? Abraham told him. You don't know how he knew about the wrong things that Abraham had done? Somebody had told him. The story was still around. How often, and I'm not trying to be mean here, I catch myself doing this, and I know you've done it as well. How often do we want to sit here and we want to dream up things that we did in the glory days while we were still running wild? How many times have you sat around with your buddies at lunch and you said, I remember when I was doing this, and you begin to tell that story? I remember before I was married and I was doing this. And you begin to tell that story. I remember when I was in school and we used to go and party, and you tell that story. And you tell the things that happened in your past. And guess what? Somebody's little ears are sitting around somewhere and they're hearing you tell them stories. And now they're picking up on what you used to do. And they're thinking to themselves, hey, Daddy used to do it, so why can't I? Time and time again. Remember what I said at the beginning of this thing? I said you could do the right thing 10,000 times, but they're going to remember the one time you did it wrong. You could tell your children, you could show your children that you were in church every single time the doors were open, but then if you go back and you tell them that story about how you used to be a drunk, guess which one they remember? They remember when you used to be a drunk. They remember when you used to be a drunk. Let me tell you this story from my own life. I remember when I was in high school, a bunch of buddies of mine, they'd been dipping for a long time. I come to the house one day, my daddy had always dipped, and I sit there thinking to myself, like, hey, he dips too, he ain't going to be too mad at me. And if he does, guess what? I'll tell him it was your can. So I went home early one day. I was going to go put a deer stand up in the woods. It was a hang-on stand, bone collector hang-on stand from Walmart, high class. I went, and I saw that can of skull, and I got one dip out of it. And I put that dude in. I had a 15-minute drive to Takapola. First dip I ever had in my life, only dip I ever had in my life. By the time I made it to the other side of Thaxton, I feel like I'm doing this number here when I'm trying to drive down the road. I'm as woozy as I can be. I feel like I'm about to puke my guts out. And I pulled in that trail and I was praying and said, God, if you'll let me get there without dying, I'll be smart enough to never do this again. And I opened that truck door and I promise I fell out. Like this right here, and I started spitting that junk out on the ground, and I started trying to get that dip out of my mouth, and I felt so sick, and I tried to keep from puking, and I said, there ain't no way I can climb up in a tree and put this deer stand in like this. I went and I cranked my truck up, and I laid the seat back, and I laid there for about 30 minutes till finally my head quit swimming. But you know why I tried it, Brother Johnny? Because Daddy had always done it. His daddy had always done it, and I thought he'd be cool with it. I thought he'd be all right with it. And instead of me seeing Daddy and I had been going to church and Daddy doing all these things, I saw that thing and it likely killed me. I promise. I got up there and I'm hanging on this tree. I don't know if you know how hang-on stands work. You put your ladder up the tree, you strap that dude on, and you get up there and you look like a koala or something. You got one leg wrapped around the tree and you're trying to tie them straps on and all that stuff to get that tree stand put on there. This thing weighs like 700 pounds, it feels like. I'm woozy. I don't know which hand's my left hand, my right hand no more. And I'm like, dear God, I'm going to die up here. And all they're going to find is what left of that dip and that throw up outside my truck from where I about died earlier. That's all they're going to find about me. But no, I saw what Daddy had done wrong, and that's what I wanted to do. How about this saying? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Let me ask you this, Daddy. Where are you dropping apples? Because wherever you drop them is where they're going to grow. Abraham had some bad things in his life. That's what Isaac saw. That's what Isaac heard. That's what Isaac learned to do. And now it doesn't stop at Isaac. It goes on another generation. So Abraham's a liar. Sarah's a liar because of Abraham. Now Isaac's a liar. Rebekah's a liar. All of them's a bunch of liars. And then guess who comes out of Isaac? Jacob and Esau. What does Jacob's name mean? Liar and deceiver. Liar and deceiver. He has become known for what his family has been doing. It's not the same way anymore. But last names used to carry the weight of what you did. My last name is Smith. In old days, what would my family be known for? Blacksmith. That's why I was called Smith. To my knowledge, I'm the only person in like the last 5 generations that ever even worked with metal. Took welding in school. So it ain't that way no more. But used to, if somebody was named Smith, you knew that they were a blacksmith, and you go to them, and they would work on something and fix something for you. Well, now his name is Liar, because guess what? Abraham lied, and Isaac lied, and now Jacob is known for it. Father, Father, are you fake or for real? As wonderful as Abraham was, as wonderful as Isaac was, we understand Jacob, he's fitting to be the father of the 12 tribes of Israel now. He's going to get this thing started real good, all right? He's going to do all that. He's going to go use a rock as a pillow, have a dream of Bethel, and have a dream at Bethel of angels going up and down that ladder in heaven. This is the same Jacob. This is the same one. But guess what his name means? Liar and deceiver, because that's what they're being known for because of how they're acting. I wonder today what we're being known for. I wonder if people could look at us and they see the fronts that we put forward of being Abraham, father of a nation, or being Isaac, the promised one, or we can put all these things in front of us that we want them to see, but on behind them, it's not that pretty of a picture. It's really not. But I don't want to leave you in this bad, sad place, because that's not a good place to leave everybody on Father's Day, is it? Abraham was as good as he was a liar. Isaac, as good as he was a liar. Jacob was known as a liar. But something happened to Jacob. Something happened to Jacob that changed his name, quite literally. You see, what happened to Jacob was a God of heaven came down and got a hold of that boy, and he changed his name and said, your name is no longer going to be Jacob, but instead it's going to be what? Israel. You don't know what Israel means? Israel means God prevails. That's what his name meant. So I want to tell you, Daddy, if you're here, and you might be like Abraham, and you might be like Isaac, and you might have some good things that you put in front for everybody that you want them to see, but in your house, and in your bedroom, and in your truck, and in your own mind, you might be more like Abraham and Isaac than you think, and there might be things there that you wish nobody knew about, and it might just be that eventually you're going to be known for those things. You might have a past. You might have a past. You might be the one that your boy walks up and sees somebody that you knew in high school, and he looks up and says, hey, you don't know this about your daddy, but he can drink anybody under the table. Hey, you didn't know this about your daddy, but he used to run around with every woman on the block. You didn't know this about your daddy, but he used to be the biggest fighter I ever knew. He used to go to bars just so he could fight somebody. You didn't know this about your daddy, but he used to cheat on every test in school. You didn't know this about your daddy, but he wouldn't ever show up and do what he was told to do. He was running wild as he could. A buddy of mine, he came to church here that one night. I don't know if y'all remember, he brought his wife with him. He told me when he went to, I believe it was his grandfather's funeral, he's standing there by the casket, some rough-looking hillbilly folks that he'd never even seen before in his life came up to him, shook his hand, pulled him in close, said, you don't know this about your granddaddy. But he was a bootlegger. And he was the only person I knew that could drive from the Gulf Coast all the way to Tennessee and never one time touch a paved road. Isn't that something to be known for? Isn't that something great to be known for? But that's what they remembered about him. And now Presley gets to think that about his granddaddy. What about it this morning? What is our legacy? What are people going to remember about us? What are our children going to remember about us? What are they seeing about us? Are they really seeing that image that we put forward? Or do we have things in the background that they're seeing and they're learning from, just like Isaac learned from Abraham, and just like Jacob paid the price for it, being named that? I don't want to be known for that. I don't want my kids to be associated and known for the things that I've done wrong, Miss Cheryl. I don't want that. I don't want them to have to go through somebody walking up to them and saying, oh, you don't remember your daddy from school, but let me tell you what he used to be like. I don't want them to have to go through that. I don't want them to have to suffer that. I just don't want that for them. I don't want them to have to deal with that. But sadly, there's so many of us here that have those struggles, and yes, we can't go back and change our life. We can't go back and change the past, but God can come in, and He can change those things about us. And instead of them knowing what was in our past, they can know what's going on right now in our future. And instead of being known as Jacob the liar and the deceiver, instead, every time he used the name Israel, it means God prevails. Everybody's thinking, hey, I remember this, what he used to be. What he used to be. Not what he still is. Not what he still is when nobody's looking. Not what he still is when nobody else is around. But what he used to be. Brother Easton, what are you trying to say this morning? Here's what I'm trying to say. Father, are you fake or are you for real? What people are seeing and you want them to see, is that really you? And all that stuff in the past, is that what used to be? Or is that something that you're still doing today that you just don't want nobody to know about because you're fake? That's the question this morning. The question is, are we having to push some separate identity out because that's what we want people to see? Or is that truly us now? Because your kids are watching. Kids are paying attention. And one of these days, your kids are going to be talking. That was one of the great pleasures of being a youth pastor. Nobody talks like kids. I knew more about what was going on in those homes, those church folks, than anybody else in the church did. Let me just ask you this, ladies, if you don't go on the piano, I'm done right here. If your little darling kids or your grandbabies took their filter off and told everybody what was going on when nobody else was watching, how would it go over? Would it be things that Daddy used to do? Or would it be things that Daddy's still doing that nobody needs to know about? That's a sad fact of the life we live now, is it not? That's a sad fact of the world that we're living in. We have this messed up mindset that God is only watching us on Sundays and Wednesdays. But we can do whatever we want to the rest of the time and nobody's ever going to know. But I'll tell you something this morning. If that's you and that's your mindset, then Daddy, you're fake this morning. And that's not how we need to live. Because what you're teaching your children, and what I can teach my children when I do things wrong, is that it's okay to do it wrong, as long as nobody else sees it. That's not how we ought to train our children. We shouldn't have that same mentality as Abraham did to teach Isaac to lie, and then Isaac letting Jacob be known for his lies. That's not what we need to be. We need to raise him up in the admonition of the Lord. Those little hands, cards, they have that Bible verse on there. Train up a child in the way he should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it. It doesn't say train up your child. It says train up a child. I love that about that verse. Brother Johnny was singing about a son who didn't have a daddy. I understand that song was talking about Jesus and Joseph raising Jesus as his own. I get every single bit of that. There are a lot of folks around that don't have a daddy. They might be looking at you as their daddy. Train up a child in the way he should go. When he's old, he will not depart from it. I want you to take a moment this morning as they begin to play and everybody stands.